that for Aquafest. We might even have it for the 4th of July. But he said, go ahead and use it for any kind of fundraising you want to do, you know, like the Rotary or Kiwanis or whatever could do some fundraising.
Yeah.
So we might just try to set it up every other weekend or something somewhere.
What made them not do the carnival? Just they don't have the staffing, or?
Yeah, staffing. Yeah. There was 7 carnivals in the Northwest. 2 of them went out of business, and all 5 of the other ones only have 1 crew.
Oh, wow.
Hey, well, it's 6 o'clock. Let's get the meeting going. Steve Ewing, are you logged on? Do you want to run the meeting, or do you want Sean to run it?
If Sean could do it, I'm on my phone, and so I don't know how effectively my data is going to be.
Okay.
So if he could do that, that would be awesome.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is going to be a City Council, Lake Stevens City Council workshop tonight, and it is via Zoom, and it will also be put onto YouTube after the meeting. And so with that, I will hand the meeting over to Council Vice President Sean to run the meeting.
All right. Good evening, everybody. We have a modest agenda today, so we're going to try to go through it as quickly as possible, make sure we cover all the necessary items and move on with all of your busy days. With that, discussion item A is bond financing information. We have a presentation from Dave Trevisan.
Good evening, Council Mayor.
There we go.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, well, thanks very much for inviting me. I really enjoy talking about bonds and finance. That's one of my favorite topics. And I'm Dave Trevisan, Managing Director with D.A. Davidson. I've had the pleasure of working with the city for many years on bonds, financing, and the like. And Barb and Jean thought it'd be good to have a little Bond 101 to go through some of the options for bonds. And I'm glad to do that. I know I provided a little PowerPoint, and I'll go through that. I think Kelly's going to help me out moving the pages, if she can bring that up. And then I'll be able to answer any questions you may have. Thanks, Kelly. Let's go to the next page.
Okay, let me just get it going here. It's being a little slow.
Hey, Dave, before you start, let me just clarify something. We're not thinking about looking at any bonds. There's no specific bonds we're currently looking at. This is purely an educational presentation for the council to understand, have a better understanding of the bonds. So just to cut that off right up front.
Sounds good. So the first page, it just recaps the various types of bonds the city could consider. First of which are what we call limited tax general obligation bonds. These are non-voted. They're also referred to as council-manic bonds because the council can do that at their discretion. The city would pledge their general fund behind it. And importantly, under state statutes, the amount of these bonds is limited to 1.5% of your tax base. Currently, that would equate to about $63 million. So there's a lot of statutory authority. The city would also need to demonstrate, which funds and ability to pay back the debt service for each of those types of bonds. Alternatively, the city could consider an unlimited tax general obligation bond. You may see these bonds quite often in the Washington bond market. Most of the time they're issued by school districts because that's their access to build school projects, but also cities, counties, other special districts can issue voted bonds. The difference here is that you need to go to the voters, get the 60% supermajority requirement, along with a 40% turnout. And the good news with voted bonds, of course, is that not only do you get the approval from the voters, but you get an excess levy of property taxes sufficient to pay the annual debt service on those bonds. The next type of bond typically issued by cities are revenue bonds. and these are secured solely by specific revenues. Typically, it's system operation revenues for like a sewer system, storm drain, water utility, electric utility that certain folks have, and does not pledge the general fund, but only the revenues of that specific utility. Less often we see local improvement districts, but these can be done as either a utility local improvement district or as what we call a standalone local improvement district, where property taxes from benefited properties are the sole pledge for the bonds in a LID boundary area. Cities can also pledge what we call a guarantee fund, which is additional security from that. But typically, bond investors look at that specific property within the LID for repayment. And all these bonds can be issued on a long-term fixed rate basis, whether they be LTGO, unlimited tax, revenue bonds, or LIDs. So the bond market statutorily, you can go up to like 40 years. Typically, we most likely see 20-year fixed rate financing. Additionally, as noted at the very bottom of page 1, the cities are authorized to do interim or short-term financing with notes. This can be 1 to 3 year financing on either a fixed or variable rate basis to get you in a position that you may want to issue bonds later on. Perhaps that's a situation where you're not sure of the final bond amount or the security that you need for the bonds, but it gets you started on a project. Kelly, let's go to page 2. Kelly?
Are you guys not seeing it yet?
Oh, no. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry.
A little slow. A little lag. Sorry.
I'm a little slow on the uptake there. So thanks much. So bonds are sold in 2 ways: public bond sale and private placement. The city has actually done both of these, and the determination of which one to use is based on the size of the bond issue and the maturity of the bonds. For a public bond issue, they're sold via an underwriter. They're sold to investors across the country. Typically, this is for larger financings with longer maturities. That gives you the lowest borrowing cost through the bond market. However, it's more work. You have to prepare a disclosure document for investors. It's called a preliminary official statement and final official statement. You also need to go to the rating agency to get a credit rating. That's a third-party credit opinion of the bonds. But with that, bonds are marketed to a wide group of investors at the lowest borrowing cost. Alternatively, smaller bond issues, say $3 million or less, that are less than 15 years in final maturity, can be sold efficiently in the private placement market. That means the bonds are placed with a sophisticated investor. Typically, that's a community bank, financial institution, or other knowledgeable investor in tax-exempt bonds. Now, there's still a competitive process done. We put together an RFP and asked the many banks to respond to it with their review of the credit and what interest rate they propose and any other terms and conditions. We evaluate those and make a recommendation, and then select a single bond investor to buy the bond and put it in their portfolio. Importantly, under a private placement, that bond investor promises to not reoffer the bonds to the public market, keep it in their portfolio unless they sell it to another sophisticated investor. All right, next page, please. Before a bond issue is put together, we go through some what we call generic tax-exempt bond requirements. And one of those is what we call whether the bonds could be designated as bank qualified. Small issuers under the IRS tax code are allowed to designate their bonds bank qualified. So in any calendar year, if the city can issue less than $10 million of tax-exempt obligations, they can designate those bonds as bank qualified and get a slightly lower interest rate in the market. And the reason for that is that the bond investor who buys bank qualified bonds can essentially write off some of the interest in their portfolio. So this is a tax subsidy the federal government provides to small issuers. We also look at what we call IRS spend down requirements. Whenever you're issuing tax exempt bonds, you need to have a reasonable expectation that you can spend the proceeds within a 3-year period. That's kind of a minimum requirement. Typically, we like to even see it sooner than that, because when you issue fixed rate bonds, you get all the proceeds up front and invest those proceeds. And so in today's low interest rate, short-term environment, we want to minimize the amount of time that you're what we call getting negative interest. In other words, investing the proceeds at a rate lower than the rate on the bonds. One issue that we look at is for a construction project, or where you're buying property ahead of time, but you're not ready to issue the bonds, is whether you want to consider issuing a reimbursement resolution. This is a simple resolution required by the IRS that allows you to essentially use your own proceeds for a project and then get reimbursed with bond proceeds later on. Most issuers take advantage of this if they've got a project that qualifies to get a reimbursement resolution. Okay, next page, please. Financial management policies are important in the credit of the city. And the city is a very strong credit, which we'll get into in a few minutes. And they have many, many credit strengths. In the Moody's credit report, which we'll talk about later on, they talked about, your minimum 10% fund balance policy, your history of exceeding those policies, your 6-year financial forecast, your monthly reporting to the council, your history of consistently exceeding or balancing your operations, and so financial management is essentially 1/4 of the credit review, but it's an important one. Next page, please. And these are some of the items that I just mentioned, things they look at, credit strengths of a policy, and they were identified in the report, which will follow. So let's go to the next page. I mentioned that third-party report important for any public offered bond issue, larger bond issues. And that's either Standard & Poor's Ratings Group or Moody's Investor Service. Here's the listing of their list of ratings, in AAA being the highest, down to BBB. And this is just in the investment grade. There are a bunch of ratings below this, but many of these are not applicable to municipal credits, which are very strong credits. So obviously, the higher the rating, the lower the borrowing cost. You can see the criteria that goes into the bond rating. Many of these things are outside of your control, like the general economy of the area. We have debt factors. We have financial performance, which is in your control, management factors, which we talked about earlier. All that goes into the credit score and the rating outcome. And you folks have a AA2 Moody's rating. It's circled there on the right. You were upgraded by Moody's in October of 2019. So a strong credit. Next page, please. There we go. There's a lot of information on this page. I just wanted to give you an example of other city credits in Washington State. And this is done by county, which is the second column. You can see it starts at Adams County, goes out to Yakima County. But if you scroll to the right and look in Snohomish County, you can see the different ratings for just the cities that have ratings. There are obviously cities that do not have ratings. Either the ratings were deemed to be, barely in the investment grade, or they don't have much debt, or they didn't apply for a rating. But as you can see, in Snohomish County, only Everett has a rating higher than you at AA1, near at AA2. The S&P ratings, they kind of mirror the Moody's ratings, but are a little different for your advantage. Okay, let's go to the next page. And actually, this page 8 and 9, I'm not going to really go over these. This is a copy of the April 2021 credit report, which is the most recent credit report from Moody's Investor Service, where they essentially affirmed the AA2 rating, which was upgraded, 2 years earlier. They cite the city's rapid growth in tax base. They cite your low financial leverage. They cite, a variety of things here, your very strong liquidity, your diverse operating revenues, revenue streams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just point out a couple things on the very first page down there. It's hard to read, but it says factors that could lead to an upgrade. In other words, if they upgraded you even another notch to AA1, they want to see substantial growth in your tax base, material improvement in some of your socioeconomic profile. And what could happen, if they ever decide to downgrade you? Well, that's a weakening of your financial profile to your peers and a protracted decline in your tax base, which obviously we're not expecting. So overall, a very strong report. BARB may receive inquiries from Moody's on an annual basis. They do what we call surveillance of their credits. Typically, this is done annually. They call you up, ask you how you've done, ask for your most recent budget, ask questions to the city about any material change that's occurred since the last time they looked at you, although that's been, just 1 year ago. Well, let's go, skip, let's go, that's perfect right there. So, I'm sorry, let's go back one page. So this page also is tough to read, but on the second column, it says score there. And this is what is the Moody's scorecard. They go through all the analysis and come down at the very bottom to an assigned rating, which is AA2. This tells you how they arrived at that rating. Okay, next page, please. Okay, rating summary. The last time they looked at you was a year ago. You were upgraded 2 years ago. They cited your tax base and strong reserves. Your general fund reserves at the time were 10.5 million, 60% of your general fund revenue. They expected your revenue growth to dilute the reserve strength. Modest debt has been noted. So those were the comments on the last rating report. So, I'm going to take a pause here and we can, I guess, turn the page, but does anybody have any questions about the city's credit rating or the bonds that I've talked about so far?
Any questions from members of the council?
Okay.
All right.
Well, hearing none, we're going to switch gears and go to interest rates. And so I'm sure you're aware we've had some significant changes in interest rate. Now, this is a 5-year history of what we call our bond buyer index. This is a long-term fixed rate 20-year index. And you can see, since we've had the pandemic, we went to 40-year lows in interest rates, and we're essentially at 40-year lows for about a year and a half, 2-year period. However, when you look at the far right there, you're seeing a big uptick, and that's occurred over the last 3 months with all the inflation, the moves by the Federal Reserve to increase short-term taxable interest rates. That has really affected our bond market, the tax-exempt bond market as well. And so you can see that move, but still, comparatively, historically, rates are fairly low. Now let's go to the next page. Now, this page breaks it down into 3 different maturities of bonds. The first one that I talked about on the prior page was a blended 20-year maturity. This breaks it down to the top, a single 20-year maturity, then a 10-year maturity is in the middle, and a 1-year maturity is at the bottom. So if you just look at these graphs, you can see that the short-term interest rates, the 1-year maturity, has spiked tremendously over the last couple months, especially in the last month. The longer rates have gone up, but not nearly as much comparatively. So that's what we're seeing in our bond market. We're mirroring what's going on in society, the gas prices, all the things that are going into prices. That affects what long-term fixed rate investors are willing to accept for an interest rate, because all those things are happening. They see prices rising so fast, they need to hedge their bets, so to speak, when they buy long-term fixed rate bonds. So those rates are going up as well. We're hoping to get, some stability here in the bond market, because our bond market isn't used to seeing these movements in such a short period of time. Okay, next page, please. I was asked to just list some items here that the council may consider in the future for projects to be considered with bonds. We list the Civic Center, the Senior Center, the museum, roads, whether you determine a transportation benefit district, and of course, any surface water or utility financing. Whether you want to consider, how would you pay back some of these bonds? Would you consider any type of levy lid lift to provide cash flow to help pay debt service on some bonds? Do you want to consider going to the voters for any bonds? Would you consider the council in their capacity to issue councilmatic bonds and pledge the general fund and come up with a methodology to pay for debt service on those bonds? Next page, please. This is just a sample example of if you did decide to consider bonds and you issued those bonds on a public offer basis. It's essentially a 3-month process. Any bonds or notes would have to come back to the council for a delegation ordinance. And the council has considered those historically, which would delegate to staff the ability to finalize a bond issue within certain parameters. Typically, those parameters would include a maximum par amount, a maximum maturity term, a maximum interest rate on the bonds, minimum optional redemption, so you could pay some of those bonds off early. All those things would be in a delegation bond ordinance that would be considered by the council. But the process takes about 3 months to get the disclosure information together. Finance staff helps a lot put together. We actually draft it, but then bond council drafts a bond ordinance. It's reviewed by city attorney and staff, and before it finally comes to the council for consideration. And then we, of course, would be going to the rating agency to get that rating updated, and that official statement would be released to the investors after that's been completed. And then the interest rates are set on the bonds on what we call a pricing date, a date when the bonds are priced and sold across the country. And then after the interest rates are finalized, we close the bond issue. So that is my presentation. I've included some other things for your nighttime reading, which is some fun pictures of my colleagues that I work with and their services and all that, and a picture of me when I had a mustache. But with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have about bonds or notes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Traeger. I'll ask the council any questions or discussion this evening. I'm seeing some head nods no.
Just a quick comment. I just super appreciate the information and seeing it all laid out in this way. So thank you for taking the time to provide this for us.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I feel the same way. I was going to say exactly the same thing. So Councilmember Jorstad stole what I was going to say. It really is wonderful to get this training. Still pretty much a new kid in the block, so this kind of stuff really is helpful. I'll be reading it again, I know. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you, Dave. It's been great working with you, and look forward to continuing our relationship with the city.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, council. I was going to hang around. I want to hear Barb's report.
More than welcome to. So next on our agenda, item B is update on the food bank. And for that, I believe we have Sofina Nunez here. There's a glare. I can't see.
Yeah, she's up there.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, guys. I wanted to introduce our executive director for the food bank. This is Anthony Hawley. I don't know if you've all met him yet, but he's been our director officially as of January 1. And we've been working really hard on the continued fundraising and organization of the building, and then also the food bank. So he's been putting together amazing monthly director's reports, which are available on our website if anybody's interested. But great work. So Anthony. I wanted to discuss a few things about our schedule right now. And Kelly, I sent you the documents kind of late. I don't know if you're able to see them, pass them on to anyone yet.
Oh, let me look. Did you sign it today?
I sent it like 15 minutes ago. So
Oh, okay. Do you want me to put them up on the screen, or you just want me to send them to council?
if you could put up the schedule for the building on the screen, I think everybody's the most interested in our construction schedule. So currently, we've had a lull in the construction because of the weather. We got a bunch of gravel in for free. I think it was like $40,000 worth of gravel that was donated to us. We did have to pay some for the trucking, which I think cost us about $2,500. Normally it would have been probably about $20,000. But we weren't able to do much with it as far as the paving or the curbing until this rain subsides. So if you look at the schedule, you can see that we are finishing up on the utilities, but now we should be working towards the curbing and the paving with the ATV paving. And then May, we're going to begin the footing and the foundation for the building. So we'll do the footing, the foundation in May, hopefully finishing that up the second week in May, start backfilling and prepping. So does anybody have any questions for me about the schedule? And you'll see at the bottom of the schedule where it says turnover 12/5/22. I mean, this is a really strict, tight schedule. We're really hoping that we can keep to this, but I also have to make sure I have the final funding for it to turn over on 12/5/22. So we talked as a team with Jeff Jacka from Corestone on what we want to do with the money that we have. And I said, let's at least get a dried in building so that we have foundation, we have footing, we have walls, we have a roof, we have siding, and we have all of our fixtures roughed in. So we're also hoping to gain the rest of our funding, get more in-kind donations so that we can have a fully completed building. I think turnover 12/5/22 is a tall ask, but we'll see what we can do.
Mayor and council, I have shared these documents with you on email, so you've got them.
Does anybody got questions for me on that? No. Okay.
I got one, Safina.
Sure.
Do you have more to talk about? I'm sorry.
I do, but
okay,
yeah.
I'll wait.
Oh, okay. So then let's talk about our fundraising. And so there is a little bit of it's a document that has all of our fundraising information on that, Kelly. I think it's the second document on that.
Okay. I'm looking. Hold on. Vertical building budget or the revised plan?
Vertical building budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've all heard that we did not get the additional funding from the state that we were hoping for. But we're still going to continue to work on that ask, which is why, if we can get that in, the schedule will be a little bit pushed out because we need to get some more funding for 2023. But you can see what we've raised so far: cash, grants that we've received for the freezer, other foundation grants, the Snohomish County grant, City of Lake Stevens grant, Hagen grant, Tulalip Tribe grant, the Rotary. We're still working with them. That's pending. We did apply for a $25,000 grant for Everett Clinic and got denied. The LDS Church, we're looking at a grant for the additional funding for the rest of the freezer. 'Cause in all, the freezer is about $100,000 for the freezer, the big walk-in freezer, walk-in refrigerator. Anthony has been working with the Snohomish County Human Services Department on a grant for covering the entire HVAC system. So that's been, exciting, and they're very interested in supporting us. So that's cool. You can look down and see that the increase in cost due to all of our construction fees went from 1.7 to 1.9 to 2.2 to 2.7. So this is what we have left to raise, the $687,345. So that we're just going to keep working on it. We're going to keep looking for in-kind donations. We're going to keep asking the state for us to be added to the budget. We're working on additional grants anywhere we can find it. We are going to resubmit the request for the $466,000 to the state, but I don't think we can do that until October. Currently, we are also working on completion of our negotiation for the lease with the Volunteers of America. It looks like we're going to be able to put together a 5 to 7 year lease with them. I asked them to give me a little bit of a breakdown of what services they're going to be providing to the city. They gave me a small list, but I know there's more involved here in this list. They're going to be providing emergency services for the city of Lake Stevens and East Side Snohomish County, including like money for utilities, money for the SNAP program, application assistance for daycare subsidies, return to work training, cold weather assistance with such as coats, blankets, diapers, again, utilities, medical programs. They have already been involved with medical programs, bringing in, dental services or vaccinations or checkups for low-income families for free. So they already have that platform or that already set up. So we're excited about that. I am, because I'm medical. We're going to have a community meeting room, like a boardroom. For example, the food bank does not have its own boardroom, so we have to borrow space from other places. And I'm sure other nonprofits have that same problem. So we'll have a shared boardroom between the VOA and the food bank that will be able to let other nonprofits use. We are planning to name that room the Egglestad Community Meeting Room after Greg. And then there's going to be a hot room in there with for other nonprofits to use. So I know that one of the big responsibilities that I felt we needed to make sure we provided for was the Veterans Commission. So they would be able to use this hot room for their meetings or kind of as an office space, kind of like a work share situation. So we have that in the works. And then Kelly, if you could put up the plans, like the floor plan, which is also one of the documents I sent you.
I'd be happy to. Hold on.
I think it's kind of an exciting thing to show. So this gives you an idea of what this building will look like and be used for. So you can see kind of in the shaded area, that's the food bank portion that you can see in the retail, the common areas, retail areas there in the middle. It has shelving, refrigeration, so that we can set up a market style shopping experience for our clients.
It'd be helpful if I tried to turn it around here. There we go. That's probably a little easier to look at.
There you go. And then if you look into the lower area where it says the need for the area will be determined as the end user is confirming it. This is a floor plan that we actually work together with the Volunteers of America to create. So you'll see the consult room 104. It's kind of near that C on confirmed. That's planning to be like the hot room. The other consult room up above the 105, that's going to be used for, the medical situation. You can see the large meeting room would be our boardroom. The bathrooms, that's the shared space for the clients and volunteers of the food bank and for the VOA. We do plan to use that teaching kitchen. There's quite a few programs that Anthony has worked on with other community sources that we can provide meals, maybe hot meals people can come in and get once a week or something. We have a lot of cool ideas for that room. But the awesome thing for us too is up above in the food bank area where you'll see prep area. We finally have like truly an area to prep vegetables, get things washed. We're going to be able to serve more because we're more prepared for cleaning things and getting it all together. Am I saying that right? Yeah. So that is my update on the food bank. Any
All right,
questions?
thank you, Sophia. It's a great presentation. Members of the City Council, any questions?
I have a quick question. Good to see you, Sophina. Do you have any like targeted fundraising activities planned that we can help spread the word about, or any ideas kind of percolating up that we can help just make sure folks know about?
Yeah, we're working on a farm to table experience. We had it kind of dialed in and it fell through, but we are planning to do something hopefully June where we actually have a chef come in and create a beautiful meal, appetizers, hors d'oeuvres, great meal with the food that we have from the food bank. So we're excited about moving forward with that. I think we got about a month of planning, but we're looking towards something like June. So we're going to call that our farm to table fundraiser, and it'll be a per plate fundraiser. We also have empty bowls again coming up in November, so we'll have that as another fundraiser. It was a big success last year, so we're looking forward to that again next year. And then any other events, I myself have been so focused on the funding and the organization of getting the building going and showing the community that we're actually doing something. I mean, there's been so much work behind the scenes that it's hard to realize like things are actually happening. But now we need to focus on, here's our numbers, here's where we're sitting at, here's what we have to get the word out to fundraise. And we have a big sign going up onto the site here, probably in the next week or so, Anthony.
Weeks, yeah.
Which will have a QR code that people can go by and just, scan it and say like, here's $20 or,
Good idea.
Yeah. We also do have Big Give or Give Big. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Give Big, it starts actually today. So it's kind of, I'm sure you guys have all heard of Giving Tuesday. So it's essentially the same concept of it, except it's a couple week long and it culminates on May 3rd and 4th. It's essentially just an online campaign to try to help us raise funds for the new building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Any matching donations that you can hear about, or know of, or, Anthony's really good at reaching out and communicating with any grant funding, any grant situation. I mean, we're really just hoping to get that 687,000. I mean, it seems silly that that's all that's left, and it is frustrating to have the price keep going up, due to the cost of everything. But we are grateful for what we've had, done for free, for the trucking, the gravel, all of that our partners have gotten for us. So, and the city, thank you for your partnership. I mean, this is something that we're really excited to work with you guys on. What I would like to know though, also is that, are we going in the direction that the city was hoping for? Because we don't want any miscommunication or, anything, that we're not doing right. So is it sounding like the city wants this route?
Yeah, I think you're right on the right path, Sophina. You've been doing great work. It's been fun to watch. And I think that the plans you guys have drawn up, location, everything's great. We just got to figure out that delta.
Cool. Well, yeah. So we'll get that farm to table event put together, get that information out to you guys. We plan on that being a lot of fun, and take pictures, put it out there on social media, grab our QR code and share the news, because I think the community too needs to know what we are doing, behind the scenes and all of that. So we're going to update our website with that information, do some more Facebook posts, but what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Really appreciate the update.
Gary has a question.
Yeah,
and so
Gary.
do I.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so not a question, but just, I think the community, what you can do and what you're doing is really powerful. The community just needs to hear from you. Isn't it too bad we don't have a newspaper? How many times I say that we can't get the word out that way. So I guess I've just given Dawn a new job for her next little newspaper she prints out, get the word out on this. But yeah, we can do this. We totally can do this together as a volunteer in the food bank up there at Ebenezer. I get to work with a lovely lady named Debbie Daughtry, who's just amazing. And I see exactly this design that you're talking about. We are in desperate need of that, because what they have at Ebenezer is, well, it's a challenge, that's for sure.
And
Thank you.
the beautiful thing about it is, as you know, Mary, there's not a whole lot of dignity when coming to the food bank. And with the new building, when people get to grab their own shopping cart, they get to come in and they get to pick things off of the shelf. They're going to have so much more dignity actually getting to come to the food bank. And it's not a place that is going to have so much stigma, personally, the way I see it, that it is now, but a place where they can be actually feel blessed to be able to come to.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gary?
Sophina, thank you for coming tonight and giving your presentation. Just to kind of follow up on Councilmember Jorstad's question, as far as your fundraising, is there a committee or a point person that we can focus people to have that discussion? Or is there a committee outreach or something that's taking place to help raise those funds? How do we go about making contact or referring people to make contact with the food bank?
Definitely, I would say our best point of contact is Anthony, the director. You can go onto our website and you can email us through the info. It's info@LakeStevens.org or director@LakeStevensCommunityFoodBank.org.
Just LakeStevensFoodBank.org.
LakeStevensFoodBank.org. Yeah. Anthony is our best point of contact for that. And then we do have a development committee, which we are meeting once every 2 to 4 weeks right now to get these events put together. But Anthony and I work together with that committee. And so if there's ideas or things to bring to us, we'd be happy to look at it and see whatever anybody thinks we can do. Any ideas, we're happy to work together with the community, which we're so excited to be in this community, because I don't think that we would be this successful if we were not in this town. This community is amazing. So we definitely, so contact Anthony.
Okay,
or myself. You can contact me as well. I believe, you have my information, but the public has our website information. Anthony's very on top of that communication now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question. Do you think you could come visit the Kiwanis Club and talk with them?
Definitely.
To do that?
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay, I can make that happen, I believe.
Okay.
They meet next Thursday, the 28th. I believe it's the 28th.
Where is it at?
It's at Papa's Mexican Grill.
Okay.
Oh, I'll be there.
Yeah. Okay. I will. I got your email here. I'll send you the information, and I will make sure it's something they can put on their calendar for that day.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Really exciting that you're doing this. You got to do it.
All right. I can't see all of the council members, so if anyone else has a question, just go for it.
I don't have a question with Sophina and Anthony. Thank you very much for coming. I will be giving you a call to talk about a fundraising event.
Perfect. Sounds great. We have a lot of good volunteers. So, putting an event together, I think we have an amazing team. Our board is amazing. Our volunteers are amazing. So yeah, we can do this.
I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to seeing you on Friday.
Yes, Barb, hi.
Hi.
I'm Sophina. Nice to meet you.
Look forward to talking to you on Friday and getting this moving.
Sounds great. Yeah, I've got a lot of info for you. So we'll get it done.
Look forward to it.
All right. Thank you both. Sounds like there's going to be lots of communication happening here in the next coming days for you. So definitely looking forward to seeing all the work continue. We're going to move on to item C, which is ordinance 1136, amendment to Lake Stevens Municipal Code 14.80.101 for 2018 IRC sprinklers. And the presenter for that is Carol Manis.
Good evening. My presentation is not near as fun as the food bank, and it should be really quick. Every 3 years, the building department adopts the Washington State building codes. We did that in 2021 in January, and there was an error made. We inadvertently adopted a requirement that says all new single family and duplexes should have residential sprinkler systems. So I'm bringing that to you tonight as a working program to get fixed. We have not implemented that. It wasn't intended to be adopted. It was an error. And so I am bringing it to you as an introduction to get corrected on May 10th when I come to council as my next step. Nice and easy correction. And the fire department, so no new houses have been required of this code section. The fire department never intended it when they did their portion of the international fire code adoption. We just need to get it fixed. So
Well,
that's
Carol, I
really-
can tell you that for the last 12 years, this has been a hot topic, no pun intended, that we have always denied. We've just, no, we're not going to do sprinklers in single family homes. It just costs too dang much money. So I'm glad we caught the error, and I'll be happy to be the one that starts it off on the next meeting to get that thing taken care of.
Thank you. Any questions anyone has? I'm more than willing to answer them.
So we're going to put that on the consent agenda?
That would be my hope for our next council meeting on May 10th.
I would not have a problem with that.
I wouldn't have a problem with that either.
Next week. No problem with that here. Any other council members want to weigh in on this?
Should we put this on our consent agenda for the 26th of April?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
All right. Any more conversation from city council? Carol, you are correct. That was a quick one. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move on to discussion item D, the 2022 budget amendment with Barb. Barb, the bar has been set pretty high for
I don't know if I can meet that. I don't think I can match that. I'm just not sure. Let's see. Okay. Are you seeing my screen? 22 budget amendment number 1? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get started on this. So this is an overall look at all the funds. This was included in your staff report. There have been a couple of changes since you received your staff report. I will go over those in a couple of minutes. So I just wanted to note that this does not include all funds that we have in the city. This only includes funds that are included in the first budget amendment. So whether they have change in beginning fund balance, change in revenues, change in expenditures, or ending fund balance. So these are the funds that are included. I did include the 633 Treasurer Trust Fund. That was one of the additional changes I made. I will show that in a minute. So again, you included this in your staff report. Again, beginning balances change as we expect them to. Revenues, most of the reappropriations are accounting for the 24th and 91st project. The revenue sources, including reimbursement of the water line construction, investment interest, and retainage held, which will also be retainage expended. So those needed to be added into the budget. The expenditures, again, 24th and 91st project expenditures. This does include multiple funds and includes adjustments and reappropriations totaling 13.1 million. So this is the majority of our budget amendment. Additionally, we have reappropriating and adjusting a total of $16.8 million in capital projects. So there are some additional capital projects in there being rolled forward. And then approximately $248,000 in operating costs also being reappropriated. And then I added this as well, the addition of the event recreation specialist, which council recently approved, and then the recruiting of the park and recreation director, which was not in our original budget. This is looking at your various operational amendments. The first thing at the top, that $10,000, there was a typographical error in the budget document that showed $1,000 change. instead of $10,000 change. I believe your detail was correct. It was just the summaries in the staff report that were off. And as I mentioned, adding the $32,500 for park and recreation, that's recruitment and potential travel for candidates. And then the planning, the event specialist, this will get moved around. Once we have the park and rec director in place, you'll be seeing a budget amendment come forward, moving a lot of money around in and out of planning and into this new, it's already a department, but it'll be kind of a different department. So you'll be seeing more movement, but that is where the money is going right now, just to account for it. And so that's for the wages, benefits, and supplies. So as you can see, I have over in the column N adjustments. CA is when council's already approved these or seen them, and then roll forwards. As you can see, the majority of these are roll forwards. There was one additional, that was an additional funding request. Actually, there's a couple. We had some technology setup cost increases for new staff. We were having trouble getting certain laptops and certain computers and had to go with other ones. And so we have some increases in costs on new staff products. And then additionally, we had Public Works Director Halverson had requested additional funding for an on-call contract in surface water that we still have contract available, but there wasn't enough budget for it. And so that additional budget, the $32,000, is to finish that contract. And I believe that's with Davido. Next, we have grouped operational amendment details. So the project column and the color coding group the amendment by the function. The ARPA, which this is our revenue replacement fund, formerly ARPA fund. It counts for the receipts and distributions of the total funds. And this, we will be meeting with the mayor and department directors to bring you forward an updated list of the funding uses. Salary and benefit, the blue section, that just accounts for updates made by the Salary Commission in 2022. The insurance, this is our citywide WCIA insurance. They did an audit of properties. We updated the property schedule, so there's additional costs there, but this is also reallocating amongst the different departments that own, quote unquote, own those properties. Swim fees, this just accounts for reallocation of expenses related to our city-owned parcels. So we have to pay surface water fees on our own parcels. And this is just reallocating amongst the different departments. And again, the properties, the parcels that we've purchased and who pays for that. And then the capital equipment, the bottom two, one is accounts for the PD line item correction. And then the other is the reappropriation of funds for the public works capital equipment that was not spent in 2021. And I did put in here, on occasion, I've only added the total amended amount, which is what's in the amendment. But I've also included the new budget so you can see what that total dollar amount is in each of those. So you kind of have an idea of how much they're changing as well. This is our capital project amendment details. The project portion groups the amendment by the project or project type. The first ones are road capital. This includes rolled forward for remaining budgets for pavement preservation. 79th Avenue Southeast. This is a roll forward of what was left for right-of-way acquisition and a placeholder for the additional acquisition that is been discussed with council a few times. We do not have a final amount on that, I don't believe. So we just placeholder that. And then again, rolling forward Festival Street, 117th Avenue Sidewalk Project and South Lake Stevens Road. Park capital, that's for 20th Street Power Line Trail, the Caballero Park sign, some work at Sunset Beach, and some funding remaining for the 20th Southeast soccer fields. Surface water capital, Catherine Creek and 36th Street Bridge funding, and then the remaining of the Weir replacement project budget. And then of course your purple, That's your 24th and 91st, reappropriates the remaining prior year budgets, which again is in multiple funds. You see we have traffic mitigation, real estate excise tax, and the infrastructure capital project fund. And it adjusts for retainage, interest earned, and project management wages. So whenever our staff have to go out and manage the project, we book those charges to the project as well. There were a couple of staffing updates made since the beginning budget in the planning department. Again, as I mentioned, we added the event recreation specialist, and then the multiple positions have been updated to allow for better flexibility in hiring based on qualifications. And that was the planner. It was an ability to hire the assistant or associate, building inspector, 1 or 2, and then the permit, which I believe just recently came forward. It's set so it can be hired as a lead or a supervisor. And then this next one, I believe Chief Bazzizo is planning to bring forward to council next week, but since the budget is going to be approved next week, I wanted to mention it now. That department is requesting a title change for the police support officer to community support officer. And so if you have questions on that, Chief Bazzizo is aware that I was going to bring this forward to you guys. And that is all I have.
Barb, this is Gary. Can we go back to this water line question here? This is obviously the biggest change, I guess you might say, of any item on here. It's about a 25% increase. Is that an increase of construction cost above what was originally projected, or was there increases in the scope of the work, or kind of?
Is this for 24th, 91st?
Yes, exactly. Fund number 304.
So that is actually what the intent was, is for originally that is for the $3 million. Oh, sorry, the 844. Yeah, give me a second. That is actually a movement of money. We are moving. Let me get my budget open for you. Hang on 1 second. Sorry. Let me get that open. Of course, everything's going to open on that page, but let's see. Sorry about that. Let me stop this share really quick while I open this up. So in the 304. So in that 304, actually, let me go ahead and share on this side so you can see the actual spreadsheet that shows this. I can't tell what screen you see. Do you see the spreadsheet?
Yes, line 55. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so on line 55, so the budget was originally the $3 million, which was actually for the grant that we're expected to spend and get reimbursed for so it was the Commerce grant that is extended till 2022 or 2023. So that's the $3 million for that. We originally were going to loan that money from the REIT fund to the 307 fund, but instead we're just going to go ahead and spend it out of that fund and reimburse it into that fund. The $844,000 is the remaining roll forward of that budget from the prior year. So it was already in that budget and we're just rolling it forward.
Okay, so we're not talking about cost overruns. It's a matter of where the money is coming from.
Yes. Okay. And I went back through our original spreadsheets and with updates that have been made throughout, and this budget is revenues and expenditures. This is the budget that we've been talking about for a year now, 2 years. So it just really accounts for rolling forward, moving the money around a little bit between funds. And there was one reimbursement made by the city of Everett that went into a different fund. And so I needed to actually increase the expenditures in that fund versus moving the money into a different fund. So The costs are not overrun at this point. We don't know anything about cost overruns. I'm not sure where we are in that. I believe Aaron might be able to give some additional information on that, but I have not seen any cost overruns at this point.
Okay. And so as far as the reimbursement from the Commerce grant, we're still 12, 18 months away from receiving that, huh?
We might be able to get it sooner than later because I believe that portion is for the water line, which is the majority of that is completed, as I understand, with Reese construction. And so my thought is that we should be able to start going for that and get the reimbursement, and then we'll follow up with Commerce and find out if there's still a delay on that money or if it's available now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Barb, I got a question for you. So most everything that has a roll forward, like in the past, that's money that was in the budget. We didn't use it and we rolled it forward. And that's why we're just making the amendment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The majority of stuff, like I said, about $16.8 million is just roll forwards. Almost 17 million is roll forwards at this point. There's very few new or adjustments. Some of the adjustments are just if utility bills are coming in higher, or like I said, the price of some technology is coming in higher than others, but most of that is pretty minimal.
Other questions from council members? All right, seeing none. Barb, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I'm always amazed at how expensive anything to do with the weir is. So with that, we're going to move on.
On the we're going to spend some money on recruitment of which was
the park and rec director.
The director.
Yep.
So we don't intend on hiring it in the year 2022.
I do believe we do.
We're
Yes.
going to hire. And
Yes.
so did you have a salary portion of that also, or?
No. I
Okay, so
believe that, if I'm not mistaken, we did actually look into that, and that's in the original budget.
Thought we budgeted like a mid-year hire,
Mhm.
July 1.
So that money should actually already be in the budget.
And then the other person, that includes the hiring. When do we think that might happen?
The event recreation specialist,
Right.
I would have to defer to HR.
So that one, we have 13 apps right now that we're going through on that. So as soon as we can find the right person out of 13 people, we'll hire that person.
Interviewing next week, so should be 3-4 weeks out.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Our next and final discussion item for this evening is discussion item E, the 2021 year-end financial report. And this is back to Barb.
Thank you very much. See if I can move this over and share my screen again. Okay. Okay. So looking at our 2021 year end, make that a little bigger so I can see a little better. Okay, so I'm going to go over this fairly briefly. The information I provided in the packet, there's some pretty good details and data in there. And as always, I want to put out a plug for our ClearGov transparency page. That information is up to date through year end 2021. So if you have any specific questions on any specific line items or departments, the transparency page is fairly easy to use. So I like to make a plug for that. So overall funds for 2021 overall was 94% of revenues received and 56% of expenditures spent. Revenues and expenditure variances are mainly due to ongoing multi-year projects and also some funded with grant reimbursement. So that accounts for expenditures and revenues. This entire presentation does not obviously take into account any of the 2022 budget amendments that we're making. So this is all, here's what happened in 2021. Obviously, we're under on our expenditures. We're now rolling those forward, as you see in the 2022 budget amendment. So additionally, so with expenditures, as you all know, we've had difficult hiring of various positions, leaving positions open and causing departments to be under budget quite a bit. Overall, we continue to be fiscally responsible, and we have a strong cash balance, which is going to allow us to do all these council priorities, including the Park and Rec Director, getting that position or getting that entire department set up, doing the APWA accreditations, improvements to technology, and also the significant contributions to our community, including the food bank and the senior center. So want to look at our major revenue sources citywide. As I mentioned, our revenues overall were 94%, which is pretty high, seeing as how we didn't get, there's a number of grants out there that we haven't received yet. Some major ones I want to look at, I've bolded them. That's our sales and use tax. That, as you can see, we budgeted 4.6 million. We brought in 6.1. This does include retail, construction, all of our sales taxes. So sales tax is 22% higher than 2020 and 33% more than budgeted. A large portion, I'll go into this a little bit more and we'll take a closer look at the sales tax, but you'll be able to see that both construction and retail, all three of them, three of our major sales tax producers, construction, retail, and food and accommodation were all up over prior year. Zoning and subdivision, I highlighted this. As you can see, we only brought in less than half of what we had budgeted. This then goes sort of in line with our traffic impact fees and park impact fees near the bottom. Those are also low. We need to keep an eye on our traffic and park mitigation fees, as those are budgeted for projects. And so the less budget, less revenues we receive, the closer we have to pay attention to our expenditures in those capital projects, as we may have to reprioritize some of the funding from other funds that we had intended to come out of traffic and park. So we'll keep a closer look on that, or keep a close look on that throughout the year, and judge how we're going on capital projects. The big one in here are real estate excise taxes. You can see that we budgeted 2.2 million and we received 4.3 million. So nearly double. Also an increase of 43% over prior year. The REIT, these funds are used for projects included in our comprehensive plan and also bond debt payments. So this is helpful for us with some of these capital projects, et cetera, that we want to do. So that is great. Everything else in here is relatively right on or a little higher. Utility taxes are a little higher than we had anticipated in street fund, but not necessarily in our general fund. And criminal justice, sales use tax, that actually goes right along with our sales and use tax. That's actually a percentage of sales tax. So that's generally a little higher, as long as sales tax is higher as well. Looking at our sales tax trend, as I mentioned, I highlighted our three major ones. Construction is at the top. You can see we increased 16% over 2020, and it makes up 26% of our total sales tax for 2021. Our retail sales tax increased 26% over 2020 and was 45% of the total for 2021. And then accommodation and food services, so that's all your fast food, all your restaurants, everything in town, increased 13% and is a total of 8% of our sales tax. So those are the ones we pay attention to most. As you remember, construction sales tax, we hold $300,000 in the general fund, and then the remainder goes into the reserve contingency fund for future capital and purchases. As I mentioned, I won't go too deep into the general fund. As I mentioned, there's quite a bit of information included in the packet and on ClearGov. So general fund operating fund, which is the top graph. So the bars are the fund balance for 2020 and fund balance for 2021. 2021 is in the dark blue. And then the blue line is revenues and the red line is expenditures. So we ended the year with slightly more revenues than we did expenditures for 2021. I believe we did this in 2020 as well. So that's actually a really good trend. The graph on the bottom includes our managerial funds. And so that is the general contingency fund, which is your blue, light blue, and there's 5.8 million in there. And then the purple is the permit fund. That's $3.8 million fund balance. And then the revenue replacement, previously called the ARPA fund, in green, and there's currently 4.65 million fund balance in there as of the end of 2021. That one will increase obviously in 2022 when we receive the second tranche of funding. So this is just an overall look. I know there's a lot of information on here, but this is an overall look of all of our funds. The ones I have highlighted, I highlighted general fund just because it does have decreased expenditures. As I mentioned, I believe the majority of those are from open staffing positions. The next one is Council Contingency Reserve Fund. As you can see, we budgeted $840,000 in construction sales tax, and we received 1.267 million. So that one's definitely our sales tax is high, as I mentioned. The next one down, permit fund, I didn't highlight this, but as you can see, the revenues were slightly lower. And then you may note that the expenditures in this fund are more than budgeted. Normally, we're not allowed to go over our budget and expenditures. But because this fund, as well as the contingency and the revenue replacement, ARPA, our general fund managerial, they're consolidated for budgeting and reporting purposes. And so it's actually not an issue. We didn't technically go over budget for general fund. And that expenditures is reimbursing other funds, including the general fund, for permit related work. And then we have looking down at our capital project developer contributions, that's traffic mitigation, and then park mitigation. As I mentioned, the revenues are lower on that. Expenditures are capital related, and as I mentioned, we will monitor those closely since there's quite a bit budgeted for expenditures in 2021 rolling into 2022. And then real estate excise tax, as I mentioned, the revenues, and then the expenditures. The majority of that budget, as I had mentioned previously, we're rolling forward 204 and 91st project will roll forward. And then the infrastructure capital project, that is our 24th and 91st project fund. That's the one that was created for the receipt of the bonds for that fund, and those have been rolled forward. So overall, 2021 was even better than 2020. I know 2020 was an odd year with COVID, but the city did not really feel the downside of the revenue reduction as so many other cities did with closures and things. And so 2021, we actually did even better with our real estate excise tax, which is a huge one for us. So that's going to be really good for capital projects going in the future. Are there any other questions? I don't think I have anything else on there.
Council members? I'm not seeing any hands. All right,
Mary?
Yeah, I just had one question. When we talk about capital projects, the sidewalk on 117th, I just wonder if that would be a thing. We've been waiting forever for that to happen. Just wondering.
I believe that sidewalk is actually budgeted in 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
There's actually two funds budgeting or funding that project, and that's coming out of surface water funds and sidewalk funds.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Get me on the spot there. It's like, let me think about 2022.
Sorry.
All right.
And there may be, I'll just say there may be some additional updates to this budget. I did send this out to department heads last week, but it was on Friday. And so some probably haven't had the opportunity to go through all their line items, make sure there was nothing that I missed rolling forward. So if there is nothing else changing, I could bring it forward on consent. If there is changes, I would definitely pull it off of consent if that is what council wishes. Consent for next week.
I'd be fine with it being on consent if there aren't any changes.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah,
Sounds
same
great.
here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barb. All right, with that, that actually brings us to the end of all the discussion items for this evening. So we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.